right. All right. This is not ESPN's 30 for 30. However, it is my 98 for 98. The 98 seasons in the history of the New York Football Giants. I'm going to try to get it done in 98 days. Probably not going to happen in 98 days. However, I'm trying to get it done before the beginning of the regular season, which starts September 10th against the Cowboys. And I think I'm well on my way. I think I'll get that done. But we're at kind of right now at like a little milestone here. This year, next year will be a milestone. This year, right now, we're doing the 1973 season, which is the 49th season in the history of the New York Giants, which is the halfway mark of our 98 seasons. Next season, 1974, would be the 50th season in history of the New York Giants. So I wish their records would reflect those important dates and times and all that, but not happening. Just goes to show you, is it 1973, the 49th season in the history of the Giants, 49th season in the history of the Giants. It was the 54th season in the history of the NFL. Giants started in 1925, NFL started in 1920, so the Giants are 5 years younger than the NFL. But just goes to show you, 1973, I'm 9. 1972, the Giants were 8-6. I think we're going to be pretty good. We'll be all right. We went from 8-6 to 2-11-1. It was just, this was just like just kind of the culmination of everything from like 1964 on. Alex Webster. This is our Alex Webster's last season as coach of the Giants. He was talked about retiring or stepping down. And it was toward the end of the season, I believe it was. I read an article one time said something along the lines like if he didn't think he could fix it or something along, which is what was going on here needed to be fixed. He said if he didn't think he could fix what was the problems were and all that, he said it was just time for him to go. So this was his 5th and final season as head coach of the Giants. He coached from 1969. This 73 will be his final season. We would get Bill Arnsparger starting in 1974. Also, Andy Robustelli. I think he was like the director of operations or something after this season. So he was kind of, after the season was over with, Andy Robustelli would become like the quote unquote official first GM of the Giants. So he was the one who would he would hire Bill Arnsparger. Bill Arnsparger was the defensive coordinator for the Miami Dolphins, their no-name defense. They would win the Super Bowl in 1972 with an undefeated season, and they would win the Super Bowl again in 1973, this season here. They only had 2 losses. So basically, the Dolphins went 2 seasons and had 2 losses. So they were what? 12, 15. They were 32-2 in 2 seasons. They were good. They were 17-0 and 15-2. They were good. But it just, everything just, where do we begin? The Giants started the season off well. They started off 1-0-1. Then that's where it all fell apart. After they started off 1-0-1, they finished the season 1-11. The first 2 games of the season were played at Yankee Stadium. Yankee Stadium was going to go under some, I guess they were renovating it or, doing some, stuff to it. But I guess pretty much renovating it. And so they were doing that pretty much after the pretty much like the baseball. They're waiting for the baseball season to be over with, which, let's see here. Let me pop this up here. So not so much when the baseball season was over. Well, let's see. All right, so the Giants' first 2 games were both at home. So their final game was September 23rd. So right around there might have been around when the Yankees, because the So the Yankees were in the World Series that year, 1973. Actually, the New York Mets were in the World Series that year. But the Yankees, I guess their season ended up, maybe they might have had a home stand toward the end of September. But after the Giants tied the Eagles 23-23, pretty much that's about when the stadium was going to be shut down or closed or whatever for renovations. And that would be the last time the Giants would ever step foot in Yankee Stadium. They would become pretty much like nomads. They would play in 4 different stadiums in 4 different years. I mean, I don't know of any other team that's done that. They played in the Yankee Stadium, they played in the Yale Bowl, they played in Shea Stadium, and then they played in Giant Stadium in 4 seasons. 1973, 4, 5, and 6. They played in 4 different stadiums, 4 different years. I said, I'm sure there's been some teams out there that might have played in 2 stadiums in 4 years or 3 stadiums in 4 years, but basically, almost every year they were playing in a different stadium. So they started the first 2, games off. They won the first game against the Houston Oilers. I'll go more in depth in detail, but they won 34-14. Things were looking good. The Oilers were a bad team. 1972 and 1973, the Houston Oilers were the only team in NFL history with back-to-back 1-win seasons. The Giants were kind of trying to tie them. So 1972 and 73, the Houston Oilers back-to-back 1-win seasons. So the Giants were like, they didn't want to be outdone. So the Giants like, you know what? We're going to try to beat you. They didn't quite beat them, but they came close. So the Giants in 73 and 74 had back-to-back 2-win seasons. Wow. So the Giants went 2-11-1, and you figure the next season it couldn't get any worse. 1974. Well, it did. I said then after they tied the Eagles, basically the Giants either played their games on the road or their new home would be the Yale Bowl. They would play 1973 and 1974 in the Yale Bowl. Now, since they played already their first 2 games of the season were in Yankee Stadium, so therefore they already played in 1973 2 home games. So for the rest of this 1973, they had 5 home games, right? 14-game schedule. They already played 2 games at home. They have 5 more at home. So they played 1973. They played 5 home games at the Yale Bowl. 1974, they played all 7 of their home games at the Yale Bowl. So 5 and 7. They had played 12 games at the Yale Bowl. In those 12 games, they won 1 game at the Yale Bowl, which was this season here, which was November 18th. They beat the Cardinals 24-13. That was the only win they had at the Yale Bowl in 2 seasons. That was the only win the Giants had the whole rest of the season. Because after the Giants started 1-0-1, their final 12 games, they went 1-11. And their only 1 win was at the Yale Bowl, which was home. They beat the Cardinals 24-13 on November 18th. It was so bad. How bad was it? It was so bad that in the 2 seasons at the Yale Bowl, do you realize the Giants played 12 games at the Yale Bowl? 12. And that was their home, right? Those 2 seasons. So you realize that after those 2 seasons were up, the Washington Redskins and the Dallas Cowboys both had more wins in the Yale Bowl than the Giants did. The Washington Redskins had 2 wins at the Yale Bowl. The Dallas Cowboys had 2 wins at the Yale Bowl. The Giants had 1 win at the Yale Bowl in 12 games. I mean, just unbelievable. I mean, I said after the 72 season, we were 8-6. We lost to a bunch of good teams. 8-6. We missed the playoffs by 2 games, but things were looking up, right? I mean, we had Norm Snead, who had a very good season in 1972, led the NFL in passing percentage with like 60.3%. This year it dipped down a little bit, but I tell you, oh my goodness, it was just horrible. I think he had 17 touchdown passes, if I remember, and 12 interceptions in 72. But he completed 60.3% of his passes. So he was, maybe 17 touchdowns and 12 interceptions back 50 years ago. Wasn't bad. That wasn't too bad. Well, this year, he had 7 touchdown passes and 22 interceptions. His backup, Randy Johnson, had 7 touchdown passes and 8 interceptions. So the Giants on the season had 14 touchdown passes and 30 interceptions. Norm Snead went from completing 60% of his passes down to 55%. His backup, Randy Johnson, wasn't any better. He completed almost 56% of his passes. Each guy started 7 games. Norm Snead was 1-5-1, and Randy Johnson was 1-6. I mean, the running game was absolutely atrocious. The only kind of saving grace for the whole thing was, once again, Ron Johnson had another very good season. His yards per carry went down. He was only getting 3.5 yards a carry. This would be his final good season with the Giants, because injuries started taking tolls on his body, injuries and bad play. 1972, I mean, it's hard to believe, really hard to believe, but the whole 14-game schedule, the Giants' offensive line was so good as far as pass protecting. How good were they? They led the league. They gave up the fewest sacks. They only gave up 10 sacks in 14 games in 1972. Only gave up 10 sacks. Very impressive. Well, this season they gave up almost 3 times as many. They gave up 28, which is still pretty good, really good. They gave up 2 sacks a game in 14-game schedule. They gave up 28, which is pretty darn good. But it just took a huge step backwards. They averaged this year 3.2 yards a carry, which is really bad. I mean, if you triple, say, if you run the ball 3 times, first, second, third down, so you triple your average. So 3.2. That means they would get 9.6 yards a carry. If you run it 3 times and you don't even pick up 10 yards, still, that's still pretty bad. Their run defense gave up 4.4 yards a carry. They only got 3.2 yards a carry. I mean, I said Ron Johnson, he averaged 3.5 yards a carry. He had over 900. He had 902 yards rushing, and he still missed 2 games. As I said, this would be his last good season. He played 74 and 75, but he was hit with his legs and his knees were just getting to be banged up too much. And so this was his last final good season with the Giants. So if he played the whole season, if he didn't miss 2 games, he would have had over another 1,000-yard rushing season. But he had 1970 and 72, he ran for over 1,000 yards. But I mean, Johnson led the team with 902 yards rushing. But then after that, we had Vince Clemens, who had 214 yards rushing. Johnny Rowland had 142 yards rushing. Joe Orduña had 104 yards rushing. Charlie Evans had 77. Charlie Evans, he had 34 rushes for 77 yards. He averaged 2.3 yards a carry. Rocky Thompson, this was the first game of the season, would be his first and last game for the New York Giants, or his first, and not his first, first game of the season, but be his last game with the New York Giants. Rocky Thompson was our 1971 first pick in the first round. In the first game of the 1973 season, Rocky Thompson came in. He started, for an article I read, he was because the Giants were up by a lot, so they took Ron Johnson out. So Rocky Thompson had wound up with 5 carries in Ron Johnson's place. Well, apparently somewhere along the line, I think Rocky said he got speared or something, and it wound up hurting. I think it was his neck. I think he wound up hurting. And so he played this one game with the Giants, and he never played with them ever again. He played, I think, in the World Football League, I think, the following year. But he played one game with the Giants in 1970. Well, he played 71. He played in 72. And but then he only played one game in 1973, and his NFL career was over. I mean, just everything was just really bad. Really, really bad. Let's see here. Receivers. Let's see. Bob Tucker led the team with receptions with 50. I mean, good old Bob. my favorite tight end of all time. We had 14 touchdown passes the whole season. Had 11 rushing touchdowns. I mean, just, nothing super spectacular at all. I mean, once again, the Giants, Pete Golladay had a nice year. He kicked 17 out of 28 field goals. He kicked 60%, which back then wasn't too bad. He kicked 25 out of 25 extra points. He would play one more year for the Giants, and then in 1975, he was done. I mean, we can go. Let me go over the draft here. The Giants, their draft. I mean, you see, some teams back then, like hardly ever traded their draft picks. Some of them, George Allen of the Redskins, he traded away almost all of his draft picks. I'm going to go over. I mean, but he was able to take his teams. He would have winning seasons. So a lot of it has to do with coaching too. A lot. So George Allen would trade away all his draft picks, and every year he never had a losing record as a head coach. Never. 1972, he took the Redskins to the Super Bowl. 1973, they went to the playoffs. I mean, he always had winning seasons, and he traded away all his draft picks, but he would get the guys he wanted, and he would make the most out of the guys he got that he got from his draft picks. The Giants, they did a lot of that, but they were just horrible. I'll go over this in a minute. But the Redskins traded away their first round pick. Redskins traded away their second round pick. Redskins traded away their third round pick to the Bills. They traded away their fourth round pick to the Bills. They traded away their fifth round pick to the Rams. They traded away their sixth round pick to the Jets. Traded away their seventh round pick to the Bills for Ron McDowell. Traded away their eighth round pick to the Saints. They kept I guess they couldn't find anybody to trade away their ninth. So they had a ninth round pick. They actually picked Eddie Sheets, whoever that is. No idea. But in round 10, they traded away their 10th round pick to the Bills. The Bills' 10th round, John Leheap from Washington. Yes, so they traded away their 10th round pick. I think they traded away their 11th round pick. They got John Pergine to the Redskins from the guy that got from the Rams. So I mean, the Redskins traded away 10 of their first 11 picks, and they had a winning season. What were they? I know. I mean, because George Allen never had a losing season. So what were they? They came in second place. Yeah, behind. Actually, they were tied at 10-4 with the Cowboys, but the Cowboys had the head-to-head on them. So I mean, but the Redskins were a good team. They went to the playoffs. They lost in the first round to the Vikings. But once again, they were 10-4. Went to the playoffs, and they traded away all the draft picks. But they got guys that they actually could use, and it was coaching. Giants did not have that. Alex Webster was a nice guy. Was not a good coach. Was not, and the Giants organization was kind of a mess back then. Well, let's look at the Giants here. The Giants in 1973, their picks. I mean, they traded away their first round pick, which wound up being one of those rare occasions the Giants actually traded away a first round or a pick to a team. They traded away their first round pick to the Browns. They got Jack Gregory. So they got Jack Gregory in 1972. In 1972, Jack Gregory led the entire NFL in sacks with 21. He had 21 sacks in 14 games. So if he played 16 game schedule, he would have had he basically had a sack and a half a game. So if he played 2 more games, he would have had 3 more sacks. 3 more sacks on top of 21, he would have had 24 sacks. He'd have the NFL record. So it was a good pick. That was a good trade for the Giants. The Giants got something good in return for that one. But then after that, it was just one hot mess after the other. Let's see now. The Giants let's see here. The Giants traded. The Giants had the Patriots' second-round pick, which wound up being pick number 30. The Giants took that second-round pick, the 30th overall pick. They traded it to the Browns. The Giants got Freddie Summers from the Browns. Now, Freddie Summers never even played for the Giants. On June 15, 1972, he was traded to New York Giants in exchange for the Giants' second-round pick in the 1973. So the Giants got him in 72. And he's like, we'll trade you our 1973 second-round pick. So the Browns like, okay, here's Freddie Summers. Now we have your second-round pick. Cool. Well, it was like no stipulation or anything like that. Okay, well, if Freddie Summers makes the team, you can have our second-round pick. Nope, nothing like that. So Freddie Summers, he was placed on injured reserve waivers on August 30th. So basically 2.5 months later, he was let go by the team. So the Giants traded away their second-round pick in 1973 to get a guy who never played for him. Never. He played 3 seasons for the Giants, for the Browns. He was drafted by the Browns and played 69, 70, and 71 for the Browns. He was traded to the Giants in 1972. Never played for them. And the Giants gave up their second-round pick in 1973 for that. And you wonder why. See, I mean, there's like their cupboards were bare, and they just were not restocking the shelves because they had they didn't know what they were doing with the drafts. Let's see. The Giants got the one good thing that the Giants did get was when they traded. I said this in my video yesterday, the 1972 season. They started adding little pieces to the puzzle, especially mainly on defense. Okay, so the pieces to the puzzle will carry their defense right in through the 70s, because a lot of the times when the Giants were losing, a lot of times the defense was doing their best to keep them in the game. It was just the offense couldn't score any points. So the defense they were starting to build a defense that could keep them in games. And you know, some of the guys would last for a little while. I mean, like Mendenhall would last until 1979. I think Gregory's last season was 1978. Troy Archer, his final season was 78, because he wound up passing away in a trucking accident, he drove his truck into a pole. But I mean, they started, adding some pieces, right? They got, Kelly, linebacker, Harry Carson, George Martin. They started getting some guys. Well, one of the guys they got, which would carry him for the next 11 years. So this wound up being one of the few good things that the Giants actually did by trading, was when they traded away Fran Tarkenton back to the Vikings, they got the Vikings' second-round pick in the 1973 NFL draft. And the second-round pick, which wound up being pick number 40, they took Brad Van Pelt. They traded away a number 10 to the Vikings, and in return they drafted a number 10, because Brad Van Pelt wore number 10 for the Giants from 1973 to 1983. So this is one of the rare occasions the Giants actually did themselves pretty good. I'm going to show you another couple boneheaded things the Giants did in this draft, which just makes you just unbelievable. But I'm saying they started adding little pieces to the puzzle here. Oh. I said, the thing was, when they adding the pieces here, as I said, it was pretty much, they added 2 pieces to the puzzle this year. They had 17 rounds, and basically they managed to screw up almost every pick, except for the 2. They got Brad Van Pelt, and in this 14th round, they took Brian Kelly, the linebacker who would play from 73, I think, as well, till 83. He was part of the Crunch Bunch. Lawrence Taylor came in 81. You had Harry Carson, you had Lawrence Taylor, you had Brian Kelly, you had Brad Van Pelt, the Crunch Bunch. There's 4 linebackers. They played 3 seasons together, 81, 82, and 83. So the Giants kept adding little pieces, like, which, as I said, which to the defense, not much so much to the offense, but to the defense. Almost every year they were adding a little piece to the puzzle. 1972, they added John Mendenhall and Jack Gregory. This year they added Brad Van Pelt and Brian Kelly. So they're adding little pieces to the puzzle as the defense started getting better and better and better. But I said, not the offense. But let's go back to the draft here, shall we? All right, so the Giants actually did good. Pick number 40. However, they had pick number 41 in the second round, and they traded that to the 49ers. Now, this is the 49ers traded Roland Lakes to the Giants in 1971. He was at the end of his career. He played one season with the Giants. He retired. So the Giants got a guy for 1 year, 1971. They traded away their second round pick in 1973. So to the 49ers. So the 49ers wound up taking Willie Harper. So it is what it is. I mean, not that the Giants ever would have drafted any of these guys, but some of the guys that the Giants could have drafted. Now, they had problems with their quarterback situation. Well, it happened to be a guy on the board by the name of Dan Fouts. Maybe you heard of him. He's a Hall of Famer. The San Diego Chargers took him. The Giants could have had Dan Fouts. But they traded away their pick for Roland Lakes, who played one season for the Giants, a defensive lineman, and then he retired, and the Giants gave away their second round pick for a guy who played one season for the Giants. The Giants, let's see, they had Harvey Martin was on the board. The Cowboys wound up taking him. Should be in the Hall of Fame, except he had some drug problems, so that might be the reason why they kind of kept him out. Joe Ferguson was a decent quarterback for the Bills. He was on the board. Terry Metcalf, a phenomenal halfback for the Cardinals, could do almost anything. What a talent that guy was. Dan Fouts is on the board. The Chargers took him. There's one other guy. Well, Greg Bingham. There was a couple other smaller guys, but I mean, there was guys on the board who the Giants could have had, who the Giants could have used, but I mean, they just didn't know what they were doing. Absolutely horrible. Trading away their second round pick for Roland Lakes for one guy that played one season for the Giants. Absolutely horrible. So then in the third round, what did the Giants do? The Giants took Rich Glover. Now, they said the Giants are probably the only team in NFL history who took back-to-back Outland Trophy winners. 1972, the Giants took the Outland Trophy winner in the draft. It was Larry Jacobson. 1973, the Giants took the Outland Trophy winner, which was Rich Glover. They were both with Nebraska. Nebraska was phenomenal back in the early 70s. Phenomenal. Anyway, and then 1974, the Giants took the third consecutive Outland Trophy winner, John Hicks, from Ohio State, an offensive lineman. So the Giants took in the third round, they took Rich Glover, which wound up being, which was really, I seen him play in college. I actually remember seeing him play on TV. He was freaking everywhere on defense. He was really good. Problem was, in college, he was 225, 230. I forgot what his weight was. But when he came here to the pros, he was too light on the defensive line. He was a little too light. I don't know if anybody tried to use him as a linebacker at all or anything, but he only played one season with the Giants. He was a phenomenal athlete. He was too light. But as I said, did anybody try to use him as a safety or maybe a linebacker or something? I don't know. But he played one season with the Giants, and I think he went to the World Football League, for 1 year. Then he ended his career in 1975. He played for the Eagles. I think it was on special teams or something like that with the Eagles, 1975, and his career was over. But he was a phenomenal athlete in college. But once again, I don't think the Giants coaching staff knew what they were doing. And he played one season with them, a third-round pick, one season, and he was gone. Lots of talent, but fourth-round pick, the Giants, they traded with the Falcons. They got the Falcon quarterback, Randy Johnson. And the Giants traded away their 4th-round pick. So the Giants had Norm Snead and Randy Johnson with their quarterback. So the Giants had a backup quarterback. So, I mean, Randy Johnson wasn't too bad. So that not too bad. You trade away your 4th-round pick, you get your backup quarterback. So I can't knock them on that one. But once again, they just traded away another pick, right? The 5th round. What did they do in the 5th round? Okay, now they took Leon McQuay, who played I think 1 year for the Giants. I think it was in the Canadian Football League. He played 1 year for the Giants. I mean, once again, they're trading away their picks, or these guys they get play they took Rich Glover, played 1 year for the Giants. They took Leon McQuay, played 1 year for the Giants. I mean, they traded away a pick for Roland Lakes, played 1 year for the Giants. I mean, they traded away a pick, got Freddie Summers, who didn't even play for the Giants. I mean, just unbelievable trash some of these picks are. Round 6, the Giants picked Wade Brantley. Never played in the NFL, I don't think. Round 7, the Giants took Rod Freeman. I've never played in the NFL. I mean, just some horrible picks. Then let's see. I got their. Whoop, boom. There we go. They took Walt Love in the 10th round from Westminster, Utah. That's a college. William Weidman they took. Ron Lumpkin. Clifton Davis, who never played in the NFL. Then they took Brian Kelly, who played 11 seasons for the Giants. Then they took Ben Nitka, John Billison from Grambling State. Then they took Carl Shokowitz, who played 1 season, who was a guard. I mean, just horrible, absolutely horrible. I just want to point out this one other thing that the Giants. Let's see here. Oh, okay. I forgot. I forgot this here. Where's this other one at here? The Giants traded away. Oh, where's it at here? Steve Holden. I know they did something else here. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. The thing I wanted to point out was when the Giants had the Patriots 2nd round pick, which was wound up being pick 30. The Giants traded that pick away to the Browns. The Giants in turn got Freddie Summers, who the Giants never even played for the Giants. The Giants got him in the middle of June, and by the end of August, waived him. He never played ever again. Well, the Browns with that 2nd round pick, with pick number 30 overall, took Greg Pruitt, who was a phenomenal, very good running back. He had 3 consecutive 1,000-yard rushing seasons. The Giants could have used somebody like that because Ron Johnson was on his way down. Giants easily could have used somebody like Greg Pruitt. Greg Pruitt, let's see. I mean, he played for a long time, but he had 75, 76, and 77 over 1,000 yards rushing. 1978, he had 960 yards rushing. That's because he missed 2 games. If he played the whole season, he would have had 4 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons. He played in the NFL from 1973 to 84. He played 12 seasons in the NFL. And the Giants could have drafted him, but instead they got some dude, Freddie Summers, who they traded their 2nd round pick for, and they got absolutely nothing in return. I mean, just absolute garbage. So basically, once again, the Giants pretty much got 2 guys, and they had 17 rounds, and they wound up with 2 guys who played. But actually, both of them played 11 years for the Giants. Both of them were good linebackers. Played 73 to 83 for the Giants. But other than that, everything else, they traded away their picks and just. So once again, I mean, the shame of it is the Giants, they didn't know what to do with their drafting. It was just horrible, absolutely horrible. But let's see here. So the Giants here. Let's go game by game here with the New York Giants now here. I mean, as I said, they started the season off really well. What's up, Teddy? We got Dan Francis Fouts. Yep. Rest I Jack Gregory. R.I.P. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's amazing. Would you believe the Raiders have not had a tie game since 1973? Wow. I know they used to have a lot. I remember John Madden. They had some tie games with John Madden. I know that. Oh, yeah, definitely. But in 1970, when the Giants started their first 2 games of the season, things were looking pretty good. They were up 27-0 at halftime over the Houston Oilers, and they wound up winning 34-14. Things were looking good. Then the next game, the Eagles came to town. It was 23-20. Eagles were winning. The Giants were marching down the field. And as time was expiring, basically, I think Norm Snead hit Bob Tucker down like around the 10-yard line. He got tackled inbounds. Clock is running. Tick, 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 tick. Well, the offense has to run off the field. Pete Gogolak comes running onto the field, and he's lining up. He's got a single bar face mask, number 3 on his jersey. He's looking down. He's getting ready to kick the ball. And I don't know, maybe Norm Snead was the one holding the ball. Center snaps the ball pretty much almost as time expires. Pete Gogolak, boom, kicks it up, goes through. Tie game. Giants run off the field and all that, so it's tied. So so he kicked the game tying field goal. If the game was like another minute longer, the Giants might have won because they were marching. They marched pretty far down the field and they got down to the 10-yard line. They just went ahead to kick the field goal because the clock was running out. But so the Giants are 1-0-1. It's like, oh, all right, this might be a pretty good season. We were 8-6 in 1972. Now we're 1-0-1. Here we go, baby. All right, playoffs are inbounds, right, baby? Here we go. All right, yeah. Wound up 1-11. All right, so let's go. Let's go through this debacle. This was absolutely horrible. All right, so the Giants, their offense was really bad. They averaged 16 points a game. Their defense gave up 26 points a game. So, it was just really, really bad. They gave up a lot of points. They couldn't score any. So the third game of the season, I remember very well as well. The Giants, we were watching. I remember watching this game. It was on TV. And the Giants were playing in Cleveland, game 3 of the season. The Giants were up, I think it was 3-0. And I remember we turned the game on. So it was in the first quarter. It was early. We turned the game on. For some reason, my dad didn't want me like watching a lot of football or anything like that. I wanted to watch football, and for whatever reason, I thought I don't know. I think they thought if I watched football and enjoyed myself, I would turn into a devil or something. I don't know. But for whatever reason, I wasn't allowed to watch a lot of football. I wasn't allowed to sit inside on a Sunday and enjoy a football game. I just wasn't allowed to. I don't know why to this day, but it is what it is. But I remember we turned the game on. The Giants were up 3-0, and very shortly after we turned the game on, Norm Snead hits Bob Tucker, catches the ball, runs into the end zone. Giants up 10-0 early on, baby. We're 1-0-1, up 10-0. We got this game. Here we go, going to the Super Bowl, right? So shortly after the 10-0 Giant lead, my dad informs me, we're going to go to the school I went to at the time, which was Great Hollow. It was like a middle school, grades 6, 7, and 8, where I lived in Wisconsin. So we're going to go, me and Mom and you, we're going to go to the school. Me and Mommy, it was a nice day out. I remember it was a nice day. We're going to go play some tennis. I'm like, no, Dad, I'd really like just sit and watch the football game. Nah, we're going to go play some tennis. I'm like, you know what I mean? It's unbelievable. I can't even talk about it. Anyway. So we I had no choice in the matter. I'm 9 years old. We go play tennis. Well, I didn't play tennis. I went to the field, and I don't know. I putzed around, but my mom and my dad were playing tennis. They did bring the radio with them, so I was allowed to listen to the Giants lose the game on the radio. So I remember it was 10-0, and we left the house. It was 10-0. It was only it's maybe 10 minutes at the most to get to the school. So we get there, we got to walk to the tennis courts. So we sit down, they turn the radio on. We get the game on the radio, and I'm putzing around, whatever. I'm listening to a lot of the game. So it's 10-0. Then it's 10-3. Then it's 10-6. Then it's 10-9. Then you know what comes next. Then it's 12-10 Cleveland, and game's over. And the Giants, so the Giants scored 10 points in, I think first quarter, and couldn't score another point after the whole. Couldn't kick a field goal. Absolutely nothing the rest of the game. We lost 12-10. And all I remember is that we lost, and I'm supposed to be there playing tennis because my parents wanted to go play tennis, but I want to watch football. But anyway, so the game, so then that was game 3. So now the Giants are 1-1-1. Then the next week, the first game at the Yale Bowl, right? We have the Green Bay debacle. Green Bay Packers come to town. Green Bay winds up kicking a game-winning field goal, like a final minute or so. Might even last like 20, 30 seconds of the game. Chester Marco comes in and kicks a field goal. Let's see, how far was the field goal? It wasn't too far, I don't think. Chester Marco kicked a 32-yard field goal to win 16-14. The Giants took the lead on a Bob Grimm 10-yard touchdown pass from Norm Snead. The Giants were up 14-13, but of course, as happens 300,000 times in the 70s, the Giants couldn't hold a lead. The other team got the ball, marched down the field, kicked the game-winning field goal. Now the Giants lose. So now the Giants are 1-2-1. The following week, of course, we played the Redskins come to the Yale Bowl, and we can't beat the Redskins. We lose 11 straight times to George Allen and the Redskins, and this is one of those losses. The Giants lose 21-3 to the Redskins, so now the Giants are 1-3-1. Then the following week, the Giants go play the Cowboys in Dallas. They lose 45-28. They actually score some points, but they give up a ton of points. So now we're 1-4-1. Then we go play St. Louis. Then we go and we lose 35-27, and we're 1-5-1. We started at 1-0-1. Now we're 1-5-1. Now, of course, we have one of the worst games I ever remember in the history of the New York Giants watching. The first time we ever played the Oakland Raiders, we went out to play the Raiders. We lost 42-0. It was absolute horrible, horrible game. I still remember a lot of it to this day. Watching it I was allowed to watch some of that on TV because it was a later game. It was around dinner time. Because the game started at 4:00. It was out in Oakland. So I was home and the game was on. It was around dinner time. So I remember watching some of it. We lost 42-0. There was 3 times we got really shellacked during that season. That was the first time. So now if we lost to the Raiders 42-0, we're 1-6-1. Dallas Cowboys come to town, play the Giants at the Yale Bowl, right? The Cowboys win 23-10. Now we're 1-7-1. We would finally the next week get our one and only win at the Yale Bowl in 1973, 1974. We would beat the St. Louis Cardinals 24-13 at the Yale Bowl. Now the Giants are 2-7-1. After we started 1-0-1, we finally get our one win out of our final 12 games. So then, of course, that means we lose the last 4 games of the season. So the last 4, these are the final games of Alex Webster and his coaching career. We played the Eagles in Philadelphia. We lost 20-16. Good game, good tough game, but the Eagles would prevail. Then the following week, of course, we go to Washington. The Giants had a lead against the Redskins, and of course, they couldn't hold it. The Giants were winning. Let's see here. So we're playing in Washington. The Giants were up 24-13. And then the Redskins scored 2 touchdowns. The Giants kicked the field. Pete Gilgard kicked a 22-yard field goal in the beginning of the fourth quarter. Giants were up 24-13. Of course, as I said, what happens like about 13 trillion times throughout the 70s, Giants would have a lead, and couldn't hold it. This was another one of those examples. Giants are up 24-13 on the road to the Redskins, and they give up 2 touchdowns in the final like 8-9 minutes or so of the game. Larry Brown scores 2 touchdowns, and the Redskins wind up winning 27-24. They come from behind and wind up winning 27. Actually, the Giants were up 21-3 at one point, 21-3, and then the Redskins outscored the Giants 24-3 the rest of the way, and so the Giants would lose once again to the Redskins. They would lose another game, and therefore now they're 2-9-1. Then, of course, we have the final, the final ending of the season, the final 2 games, the final 2 shellackings that the Giants would get in this season, the final 2 shellackings of Alex Webster's coaching career, the Monday night debacle in Los Angeles. Well, this is probably the reason why the Giants didn't get put on the 1974 Monday night schedule, because they looked so bad in the 1973 game. They went out to Los Angeles and they lost 40-6. Absolute. They had 8 first downs. The Rams had 24 first downs. The Rams just walked up. The Rams had over 200 yards rushing, walked up and down the field constantly, just totally outclassed the Giants, totally annihilated the Giants, totally embarrassed the Giants. So now we lost 40-6. So then the final game of the season, the final game of Alex Webster's coaching career, it was in the snow. It was flurrying. There was a little snow on the field. Nothing, no big, huge accumulation, but it was snowing. So they would play. Fran Tarkenton would come back to town, the quarterback that we just traded away. So we have our quarterback, our quarterback, Norm Snead, who we got from the Vikings, is going up against Fran Tarkenton, who we traded to the Vikings. So, the final game of the season at the Yale Bowl, the Giants would wind up losing 31-7. Now, the game was a lot closer than that. The Giants had so many fourth down they had like fourth down in like a half a yard, or fourth down in a yard like 4 times. They went for it every time, and they just kept coming up short. They moved the ball. It's just that, everything pretty much went through. There was a pass, I think it was on fourth down. A pass got picked off. We got run back for a touchdown. It's just, it was just not meant to be. So my last visions of Alex Webster as a coach, because I remember watching this game on TV, was he was walking off the field. It was flurrying out. It was really kind of gray and overcast and all that stuff. It was like flurrying out, just watching him walk off the field there at the Yale Bowl in his final game of the 1973 season, and basically the end of the 73. It started off with so much promise, starting off 1-0-1 and finishing 2-11-1. Just absolutely horrible. But the three, not crushing, but the 42-0 we lost to the Raiders, the 40-6 we lost to the Rams, the 31-7. What is it? We lost 42, 82, 83. We lost 113-13 in those 3 games. 113-13 in those 3. Just totally outclassed. We had no idea. We couldn't do anything. Couldn't stop anybody. Couldn't gain. It was just absolutely atrocious. But so Alex Webster's coaching career was over. He walked off the field, and that was it. So we would get Bill Orange Parger in 1974. But let me real fast here go over the 1973 season here. What we got? The Miami Dolphins would, in the AFC East, would finish 12-2. They would also, in 1973, O.J. Simpson was the first rusher ever to rush for over 2,000 yards in a season, 1973. But in the AF Central, the Bengals and the Steelers were both tied at 10-4. The Bengals would win the division. The Steelers would wind up being a wild card, and the Raiders would be 9-4-1, and they would win the AFC West. I'm sorry. So in the playoffs, the Miami Dolphins would beat the Cincinnati Bengals 34-16 in the first round, and then the Raiders would beat the Steelers 33-14. And then in the AFC Championship game, the Dolphins would win 27-10, setting up the Dolphins going to the Super Bowl. In the NFC, the Cowboys and the Redskins were both in the NFC East, were tied at 10-4. However, the Cowboys would win on a tiebreaker. In the NFC Central, the Minnesota Vikings won with a record of 12-2. NFC West, the Rams would win with a record of 12-2. So you got the Cowboys, the Redskins, the Vikings, and the Rams all made the playoffs. Well, in the first round of the NFC playoffs, the Minnesota Vikings would beat the Washington Redskins 27-20. The Dallas Cowboys would beat the Los Angeles Rams 27-16, setting up in Texas Stadium, the Vikings and the Cowboys. Well, the Vikings would prevail 27-10. So now you got the Vikings went to the Super Bowl with the Dolphins. The Dolphins would wind up winning 24-7 in the Super Bowl. It was really a horrible Super Bowl. The Dolphins were up 24-0, and the Vikings scored a touchdown in the fourth quarter to make it somewhat almost kind of respectable. But the Dolphins would win 24-7 wasn't a good game. I mean, it was I was pulling for the Vikings because Frank Tarkenton was the quarterback, but just was not meant to be. The Dolphins were really, really good. But in that Super Bowl, Bob Greasy only throws 7 passes. I mean, could you imagine? You got quarterbacks nowadays throwing 7 passes on one drive. Well, for the whole game, he threw 7 passes. He completed 6 of them. He was 6 out of 7 passing the ball in the Super Bowl. They ran the ball 53 times for 196 yards. The Vikings did a decent job. They only gave up 73 yards passing to the Dolphins. They shut down Mercury Morris, Jim Kick, and Bob Greasy, who ran balls, as well. But they had a hard time stopping Larry Zonka. Larry Zonka carried the ball 33 times for 145 yards and got 2 touchdowns. So he was a tough load to stop. I said the Vikings couldn't run the ball at all. Frank Tarkenton was 18 out of 28. He had 182 yards pass, and he had 1 interception. But, it wasn't much of a Super Bowl. It was just very methodical. I mean, the Dolphins would get the ball, and the Vikings couldn't move. The Dolphins would methodically maybe move down the field and get a field goal or a touchdown or something, and they would just keep increasing their lead until it was 24-0 going into the final quarter. And you knew it was pretty much because 24-0 back then was 4 scores. So you go into the fourth quarter and you're down 24-0. It's over. And that was a very hard Super Bowl to watch. I remember watching. I said because I was pulling for the Vikings because Frank Tarkenton was their quarterback, and I like Frank Tarkenton. He's my favorite quarterback of all time. So, what we got, Teddy? Bob wore glasses. He was. Bob Greasy wore some glasses. Yes, he did. And one of his pairs of glasses is in the Hall of Fame. Oh yeah. I went to one game in Oakland and Bengals won it. Top that. Oh, I went to one game in Oakland and the Cowboys won it. There you go. There was the last time the Cowboys, was it 2018? I think it might have been. Good game. Real good game. So, yeah. So, it was to Oakland, because we wanted to go to the Oakland, the Coliseum before they left and went to Vegas. Yeah, so because the only reason why we went to the Cowboy game was because my son likes the Cowboys, so it was like a birthday present for him. So this year we're probably going to go to the Cowboys playing the Dolphins in Miami as his birthday present. But that year when we saw the Cowboys play the Raiders in Oakland, that was his birthday present. It wound up being a good time, good game, really good game. But the 1973 season for the New York Giants started off well. Started off 1-0-1. They finished 1-11, and after that, so they finished up 2-11-1. I mean, they started 1972. They were 8-6. So when they started the season off 1-0-1, you thought things were going to be pretty good. But how wrong you can be. How they finished 1-11. Still to this day, still scratching my head. They're absolutely horrible. Final 12 games, they went 1-11, and of course, 1974 wouldn't be any better either. 1974, they would go 2-12. So the Giants had back-to-back 2-win seasons. So 1974 was not much better either. They'd have a new coach, a kind of a new GM, Andy Robustelli. But 1974, the results were pretty much the same. Well, that wraps up the 1973 season. I'll be back again tomorrow with the 1974 season, which just happened to be the 50th season in history of the New York Giants. I'll see you then.